Hi, first grade. It is time to read some Magic Tree House. When we last left Jack and Annie, they had just made friends with a seal hunter and his team of sled dogs. See, they're pulling the sled here, and he's saying mush, mush, which means go. Chapter 4 is called Snow House. The dog sled skimmed silently over the frozen tundra. The seal hunter ran alongside it. Sometimes he cracked his whip against the ice. The snowdrifts looked like giant white sculptures as the sun slipped behind the frozen hills. Then a full orange moon rose in the sky. The moonlight lit a small, rounded igloo in front of them. The dog slowed and then stopped. So an igloo is a special kind of house that's built out of ice. Jack stepped off of the sled. Annie went to help unhitch the dogs, take them off of the harness that they're on. Jack took his book and read about igloos. The word igloo means house in the language of the native Arctic people. The house is built with blocks of snow. Dry snow is good wall material because it keeps in the heat. The temperature inside an igloo can be 65 degrees warmer than the temperature outside. That's a lot. If it was 65 degrees outside, you wouldn't need a jacket at all. You would be wearing a t-shirt. Jack took out his notebook. He pulled off his mitten just long enough to write, "Igloo means house." "Come on, Jack," said Annie. She and the seal hunter were waiting for him in front of the igloo. The dogs were leashed together outside. Jack hurried to join them. The hunter pushed aside animal skins covering the entrance, and they stepped inside. A fat candle burned brightly. Shadows danced on the walls of ice and snow. Jack and Annie sat on a fur-covered platform. They watched as the seal hunter moved about. First, he lit a small stove. Then he slipped outside. He came back with a snowball and chunks of frozen meat. He put the snowball in a pot over the stove, and then he added the meat. "What is he making?" asked Annie. Jack pulled out his book and found a picture of a hunter cooking. He and Annie read the words. There was a time when nearly all of the Arctic people's food and clothing and tools came from Arctic animals, especially the seal. Nearly every part of the seal could be eaten. Lamps were fueled with seal fat, clothing was made from seal skin, and knives and needles were carved from seal bone. "He must be boiling seal meat," said Jack. "Poor seals," said Annie. The seal hunter looked up. "They are not poor," he said. "They help us because they know we would die without them." "Oh," said Annie. "In return, we always thank the animal spirits," said the seal hunter. "How do you do that?" said Jack. "We have many special ceremonies." He reached under the fur-covered platform and took out 2 wooden masks. "Soon there will be a ceremony to honor the spirit of the polar bear," he said. "I carved these masks for our ceremony." So they're inside of the igloo. Here's Annie, Jack, and the seal hunter, and he's showing them the polar bear mask he has for the ceremony. A ceremony is kind of like a celebration. "Polar bears," said Annie. "Yes," said the hunter. "Just as the seal has given us many gifts, so has the polar bear." "Like what?" said Jack. "Long ago, the polar bear taught us how to live in the ice and snow." "Taught you?" asked Jack. "I mean, can you give us some facts?" The seal hunter smiled. "Yes," he said. "A polar bear catches a seal when the seal comes up to breathe through a hole in the ice. The oldest seal hunters watched the polar bear and learned. This is how my father taught me to hunt seal, and how his father taught him." "That is a good fact," said Jack. "The very first of my people learned to make igloos from polar bears," said the hunter. Polar bears build snow houses by digging caves in the drifts. A snowdrift is when the wind blows all the snow and it makes a big pile of snow from the wind blowing it up, and then the polar bears dig a hole in the pile and they make a little house to live in. Sometimes the polar bear can even teach people to fly, said the seal hunter. That's an amazing fact, said Annie. Jack smiled. The rest sounded like true facts, but I know that one's pretend, he said. The seal hunter just laughed and then turned back to his cooking. That's why he wasn't surprised to hear about the treehouse, thought Jack. If he believes polar bears can fly, he probably would believe anything, like time-traveling treehouses. The seal hunter lifted the chunks of boiled seal out of his pot. He dropped them into a wooden bucket and gave it to Annie. Let's feed the dogs, he said. Oh boy, said Annie. She followed the hunter outside, swinging the bucket. Jack quickly threw his notebook and the Arctic book into his backpack. He started to follow them. Then his gaze fell, so like where he's looking with his eyes. His gaze fell on the 2 polar bear masks. He picked them up to get a better look. Each was carved in the shape of a polar bear's face, with a blunt nose and roundish ears. There were 2 holes for eyes and a strap to hold it around your head. Suddenly, howls split the air. Ow! The dogs were barking and growling. Annie squealed. Are the dogs attacking her? Jack wondered. Annie! Still holding the bear masks, Jack charged out of the igloo. The next chapter is number 5, and it's called You're It. Kind of like when you play tag, right? You're it. I wonder if they're going to play tag in this story. What do you think? We will find out tomorrow when we read. Thanks for reading with me today, first grade. Goodbye.